What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to attempt to relate back to you guys a blog I wrote a couple years ago and actually never published. Ironically enough, the cool thing about this is this has become part of the very common zeitgeist that we see from some of the big influencers out there, like an Andrew Huberman, in terms of like what makes life kind of work. So I had entitled it The Tree for a Good Life. Now I do need to give background here. I've got 25 years of working with fitness, martial arts, and what I generally refer to as like personal development type stuff, whether it be physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. Spiritual to me is a little on the soft side because that's very fuzzy, but helping people to be better, happier, stronger versions of themselves, right? So I came up with a list of, I sometimes think of like the negative motivator, right? Like I want to avoid the negative. So what are the positives to avoid that? I know most people like to think of a positive goal first. But I came down to if you're not doing these things, you really have no right to expect a happy, healthy, productive life. Now, this is not a complete list for you. This is not a complete list for me. I have ancillary things that I have added to this individually, and that's not part of this conversation today, that continue to complete and fill out this list for me. This goal was to create a baseline. I need to make sure these boxes are checked before I can worry about all that other stuff, right? So if you're feeling unhappy thoughts, if these aren't checked off, there's probably more you have to do, but if these aren't checked off, get them set up, get them checked off, and then start to look. Most of the time we find that if people are knocking these things out for 3 to 6 months of their life, weirdly, a lot of their other stressors and problems start to kind of become diminished. It doesn't solve everything. That'd be kind of cool if it did. I don't have a magic bullet, sorry. I deal with anxiety, I deal with stress just like everybody else. I have moments of higher stress, moments of lower stress, and frequently when I do a little self-analysis, I'll come back to this list and be like, oh, that's because this has sucked for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I need to get back on that horse, and I need to actually dial that up. So I want to talk real quick about the number 96.2. 96.2% of the time, this is the list that you need to make sure that you follow. And what is that 96.2? Well, it's 52 weeks out of the year minus 2. Basically, the idea is I understand we're going to go on vacation time. Because you're on vacation time, some of this stuff's going to go by the wayside. Okay, cool. And as rapidly as you can, you go on vacation, Sunday to Sunday, that following Monday, get right back to your habits, get right back to your routines. The other thing is, this is not my list. This is with a capital T, the list. Humans are all individuals, but that's kind of at the far end of the spectrum. There's some basic things that we all need. You might like to say, well, I can run on less sleep, or I can do this, or I can do that. That might be true for a little while. We all can for a little while, which is why we allow for a couple of weeks of vacation when we have this conversation. But it's really important to recognize that this is kind of the things we all need. And what I'm trying to do is now, again, when I wrote this list, this didn't exist, but if you go listen to many dozens or maybe even 100 hours of the Huberman podcast, you're going to find all of this stuff. There's a couple of big interviews he's done with Peter Attia or Jocko Willink. You're going to find all of this stuff. Maybe in this couple of minute video, you get saved a little bit. My background, like I said, fitness, I'm working on my master's in psychology. I'm kind of just a nerd and I'm always reading stuff or absorbing information from good humans. So the goal is to give you a quick, easy list to access that helps address these things for you. Okay, so let's get started. Number 1, talking it out. Here's the thing. Whether this is weekly, bi-weekly, I strongly recommend a system in place to talk things out. Maybe you have a sibling you're incredibly close to and they're the person you can talk it out with. Cool, win. Maybe you have a professional therapist and that's the person you talk it out with. Cool, win. Maybe you have a really strong social network of peers that you respect. Maybe that's the group that you talk it out with. These are all okay. We have a big cultural push right now for therapy, making and normalizing therapy. That's totally cool. But I also want to make sure we understand, as a male in his somewhere between 40 and 60, there's a really good amount of data that shows having a strong peer network doesn't unfortunately exist for this group, or this group of humans. So there's actually something I started here locally purposefully a couple months ago where I make myself available as much as possible and other friends. And it was a very simple mandate. It was not even a mandate, suggestion or offering. hey guys, similar group of guys, all generally between 40 and 60. Sunday night at 6 p.m., you guys want to get together and talk it out, we're there. Now we choose the venue we go to, restaurant, bar, whatever. It's not really about the alcohol, it's not really about the food, although we enjoy both. It's really about the opportunity to kind of, we have a joke that during the course of the time that we're there, it might be an hour. Sometimes somebody's got some stuff to work out, and I've been there for 4 hours before. And we vacillate between deep water conversations and dick jokes, because we're guys. So, this opportunity to talk things out, find the one that works for you and make sure it's part of your regular practice. Not surprisingly, number 2 on the list is going to be fitness and diet. Now, one of my favorite quotes on this one, when I went to learn nutrition formally and get certified in it, the instructor joked that the first rule of proper nutrition is don't eat like an asshole. I know that sounds like something you wouldn't expect an instructor to say, but it actually kind of follows through. If you look at just general nutrition, if you follow almost, I'm gonna piss off people here, but I've been doing this for a long time, guys. If you follow almost any regular nutrition plan, you cut out processed sugar, you're lacto, whatever, I forget the vegan with the vegetarians who will eat eggs, cool as a balance. As long as you're doing something that's not too crazy extreme, sorry carnivores, maybe for a little while, but not great data long-term for fiber and gut health. You need to have a good balance here, guys. And as you work on this stuff, have a good, healthy balance and don't eat like an asshole all the time. I had nachos last night, guys. They were delicious. 85% of the time, I don't have that kind of food. I tend to have the same basic things and a basic meal plan. Download any fitness tracking app, go to TDEE for total daily energy expenditure calculators online. There's several of them, they're very good. And just get a good general sense. Spend 1 week tracking really hard what you're eating, and after that it gets much easier. For exercise, my friend has a facility in Providence with one of the best names of any fitness and martial art facilities around. Just train. In the case of fitness, guys, just move. 30 minutes, 45 minutes a day where you're intentionally on purpose moving. Maybe it's Sunday and it's your down off day and you just go for a 45-minute walk, win. The rest of the time, I recommend somewhere between 20 and 45 minutes of picking things up and putting things down and making sure you're getting your steps in, whether that be sometimes just straight out walking, whether it be sometimes walking on an incline, whether it be outside with a light jog. You need movement in your life, guys. We are not designed as sedentary creatures. If you want more detail on this, send me a message. I can give you more detail, but this is about the list right now, not about fitness planning, okay? Number 3, I'm gonna get pushback on, but you gotta have a sleep and a waking routine. Now I'm gonna go right into this one very simply. Here's my rule. If you have a time that you need to get up most of the days, then that is the time you need to get up all of the days. Before you start twitching, I'll make this very simple. I get up at 5 a.m. I teach a class at 6 a.m. That means on Saturday and on Sunday, my alarm clock continues to be set at 5 a.m. I know this is gonna be unpopular and I don't really care. What I'm telling you is best practice. So for you, if you're a 6 a.m. person Monday through Friday, if you suddenly decide to sleep until 10 o'clock on Saturday or 11 o'clock on Sunday, you are messing with your circadian rhythms. Again, go back to the Huberman podcast, guys. Listen to the first 4 episodes. They're all on sleep. You will start to get the heavy duty data on why that's sleeping in. You are basically causing yourself to experience jet lag. Don't induce that on purpose. If you want to get good sleep on a weekend, go to sleep early. That's how you make that happen, okay? But I now wake up every single morning at 5 a.m. I don't need an alarm clock really anymore. Do I still set one? Yes, because hydration, nutrition, bad dreams, nasal things. There's lots of reasons I may sleep past and I do have to be somewhere, but I still set the alarm at 5. But most times I wake up somewhere between 4:50 and 5 a.m. no matter what's going on, even if I forget to set an alarm. So, by the way, just a little caveat to that one. For my own habits, sometimes on a weekend, I will get up. My body will let me doze off if I go do something. So I'll go back and I'll go do something real quick, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I'll get back into bed. And it kind of gives myself permission. Okay, you checked a box, now you can go back and take a nap or you can kind of sleep a little bit longer. That's totally fine if that works for you. I have no problems with that whatsoever. But just understand that regular sleep pattern, you can get into like the lowest body temperature again. Go listen to Huberman. He does it in huge detail. It's great stuff. it gives you opportunity to kind of set that pattern and then work backwards. I wake up at 5 a.m. I should really be trying to get to bed somewhere between 9 and 9:30, understanding that I'm hoping to fall asleep between 9:30 and 10, 7.5 hours. I've tested this. COVID took a schedule away. So I kind of tested optimized sleep for myself. I'm right between 7 and 7.5 hours, which turned out to be optimized for me. Maybe you're a 7.5 to 8 per hour person. Sorry, no one's a 5-hour a night optimized person. We're just not. I have run between 5 and 6 hours for a lot of years. I was not optimized. Having now tested it a little bit at like 7.5, I now can tell you with a lot of confirmation, as somebody who slept 5 hours for a lot of years, it's just not optimized. Next one is journaling, and I personally do this not on a pen and paper and writing out a whole, a diary or a blog. I tend to journal through calendar, and I like to look at checklists. So that is a form of journaling. Really simple. Do what's best for you here, guys. If you want to write notes out, I have several documents in a Google Doc. I'm looking at one right now where I tend to write out thoughts and ideas. Sometimes it's about my day, sometimes it's about my stressors, sometimes it's about goals and things I'm looking forward to. But the more you write this stuff down, the more you tend to get control of your anxiety and your stress and your excited and your fun goals, right? So some type of recording, note-taking, journaling, strong recommendation. In line with that one, guys, would be a goal board of some variety. Again, I have one on my phone that I use in the Google Doc. If you want to have like a vision board or a goal board on a wall, that's great. You have to find the version of this that works for you, but some type of defined goal board, whether it be a financial goal, I want to have X amount of dollars set aside, whether it be a hobby building goal or a professional goal, a work goal, maybe it's a fitness goal, whatever the goals are. You should have multiple of them, by the way, for all these aspects of your life, but make sure you have these goals that you're making progress and working towards, because you're never going to feel better about yourself than when you hit a goal, you have that moment in time, you celebrate with yourself, and then you pick your next goal and you continue to move forward. Next up, guys, is some manner of hobby or activity that you're involved in a weekly basis, ideally. With regards to hobbies, I would suggest something that is like for individual purposes. So I really like to cook. Yes, we all need to eat, but I consider cooking and experimenting with food, or I make beef jerky. I consider that to be a hobby of mine. And then some other, like jiu-jitsu for me started out as a hobby at the end of the day. Some sort of social engagement hobby gets a huge bonus point there. So a fitness, a martial art class, something where you create a larger social connection. Kind of going back to our first thing about talking it out. That social connection, guys, I'm not going to sit here and blame smartphones or computers or COVID or any of that kind of stuff, but we have a diminished sense of social connectivity these days. And you go and dig into the data and the research, and it's pretty clear that this diminished social connectivity is causing people higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide, unfortunately, or suicidal ideation at the very least, higher rates of anxiety. And if you can take your hobby and make it part of that, and I'm biased, come do martial arts, but if it's golf for you, seems boring, sorry my golf friends, but that's cool. That's a social connectivity, hobby, and activity that all gets you some kind of physical activities. Look how many boxes we're checking at the same time. That's cool. Maybe it's a book club. That's a great activity, right? So it doesn't really particularly matter what it is. It matters that there is something, and a bonus check if it has a social connection to it. Next up on the list, guys, is reading. Now, this can take a lot of forms, right? I joke when I was a kid, when I finished my book, I'd read the cereal box because it was the activity of reading. For our young students, we refer to reading as brain push-ups. And this stuff you cannot get around this. Terrifying statistic about how few adults after leaving high school or college, whichever one you finish at, never read a book ever again. That worries me. Now, real quick, I know it's 2023, so your book might be a blog. It might be, some manner of online resources. If you've never played with Google Scholar, if you don't know what this is, go to Google Scholar and quickly pick a topic that you're curious about, type it in there, and you can find a whole lot of really, really amazing scientific data and research about that topic and educate yourself, which will kind of get to my last point in a moment. But the activity of reading, it cannot be overstated, guys, of what it does for brain creativity, cognitive reasoning, staving off things like dementia and Alzheimer's. You need this activity in your life, and will help, transport you away from your anxiety and those other challenges that we all have. Last one, this might fall into the category of for me, but I'll be honest with you, this might just be making a wish to the general zeitgeist about, I wish more people would do this. normalize and practice saying, I don't know, and I'm going to find out more. You know, we walk around with a magical little box that has the collective wealth of human knowledge in it. It's okay to say, hey, I'm busy right now. It's okay to say, you know, I don't know enough about that topic to speak intelligently about it. And then say, you know what, I'm either gonna go find a blog, I'm gonna go find on YouTube and look for an expert, I'm gonna go find a friend who does this thing. You know, there was a bank crash recently, and despite the fact that I worked in the stock market a lot of years ago, I don't know enough about the current situation, and I went in that one of my Sunday night gatherings. I spent a half hour listening to people just kind of back and forth as they talked about a lot of these developing situations that caused these banks to fail. And my answer was, I don't know. I want to find out more, right? So I went to actual industry experts in that particular case. But again, you have the opportunity, say I don't know, and go find out. Now there's going to be some situations, guys, where it's I don't know and I don't care. You know, people talk about knitting recently, and I was like, I don't know the difference between knitting and crocheting and the hooks and loops and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, and honestly, if you love it, great. I don't care. I'm not going to spend 2 seconds researching that. But if it is something that kind of interests you or you're curious about, take 20 minutes out of your day, go read about it. So you're checking the reading box as well, and you're getting an opportunity to kind of slightly educate your level of understanding on a particular topic. It's a really great feeling. So just try to normalize that as best possible. Final thought. This is the list, as I said at the beginning, guys. It's not the complete list. It's not my complete list. I have a whole bunch of other stuff on my own personal list that have nothing to do with this conversation per se, because they're the things that check boxes for me, right? For you, this is a baseline list that I have found over 20 plus years of working with people where if they're not getting these things done, they seem to express a higher level of dissatisfaction, being unhappy, anxiety, stress, depression, et cetera, et cetera. And then they may look for, unfortunately, external resources to find those things. Unfortunately, we're in a society where self-medicating is a little too readily available. And that's, as a fitness professional, as a health professional, naturally that scares the crap out of me. And I'd like to try to just make the suggestion to you guys today that take a look. How many of these things can you check off? How many of these things? Take 60 days, take 90 days, and you know what? I'm gonna work really hard for the next 90 days on trying to check all of these boxes and seeing how many of these systems and protocols work in my everyday life, and how do I feel? Take that, you know, mental temperature on how I'm feeling with my general happiness, life, satisfaction, et cetera, and then go fill in the holes. What are you missing? What are the other things that you need to help check that box? A couple years ago, I got into riding a motorcycle. You know, there's a whole conversation to have about like activities, call it a hobby, that force you to put 100% of your focus into a thing because the threat for zoning out is very, very high. Helps de-stress you in a way that many other things won't, right? So laying on a beach, to me, I don't find particularly de-stressing because I'm thinking about work or I'm thinking about social problems or my personal problems because I'm not active. For me, I relax better, and there's some data on this and there's some research on this. I relax better when I have an activity that requires all of my mental focus. Martial arts has been doing that for me for a lot of years. When you're trying really hard not to get punched in the face or not to get choked unconscious, suddenly work stress is bullshit that you don't worry about very much. Spouse arguments or kids stressing you out or bosses stressing you out. None of that stuff tends to matter very much when you're working really hard not to get punched, not to get choked, et cetera, et cetera. On a motorcycle, on a ski hill, whatever the thing is that allows you to capture your idea of complete and total focus. We call this, there's a conversation of Fudoshin for immovable mind and Mushin for empty mind. These concepts go in the martial art world to getting to that mental state of Mushin, empty mind, does not mean thinking about nothing. It means really for us as practical martial artists, the opportunity to focus on a singular thing, right? We get sucked into I learned this term recently, doom scrolling. And kind of just going through the motions of scrolling through your social media. There's probably some better outlets for that, guys. Like I said, some sort of hopefully physical, but there's, you know, when I'm cooking, I tend to be super focused on my cooking. That will help add that extra stuff in. But again, this is mine. You got to go find the extra boxes for you that will help all those other things. So again, I call this my treaty for a good life. For me personally, if you're not checking all these boxes, guys, you're going to have struggles in terms of finding that happiness. So I'd love your feedback. You don't have to expose anything too personal, of course, but in the comments below, what are some things that help you that are not on the basic list? Or what are some applications for you? Maybe you do shift work, and shift work for sleep schedule, oof, that's gonna be a very hard challenge, because obviously on a Saturday night, you don't wanna stay up overnight, you wanna kind of sleep in. It's gonna be very, very challenging. Or maybe you have baby, infant twins at home. A lot of this stuff's gonna get pushed to the side, and you're gonna go into a survival type mode for a little while. So how many of them can you slowly start to incorporate back into your life so you're not running the ragged edge at all times? So thank you very much for listening, guys. Thank you guys very much for participating, and I will see you guys soon.